Hey, have you ever wanted to carve a pumpkin using Photoshop? Because that's what we're getting ready to do right here. So we're all going to start with this pumpkin image, which you can find online and also at our class website at classjump.com/Skinner. And down at the bottom, you should be able to find the pumpkin image. I've done this twice, and it looks different pretty much every time, but here's one of my pumpkin images, and here's the other one. And so this is what our ending result will look something like. So let's hop to it. There are some written instructions, if you prefer written instructions, that are on the website as well. So help yourself to that if you prefer that. So we're going to start off by using the quick selection tool, and we're going to select the pumpkin. And you'll get a little bit of the grass down at the bottom. That's okay. If you want to try to get some of that out of there, you can, but it's really not going to hurt too much. So kind of up to you. Alright, once you've got that taken care of, we're going to right click that and copy it out to its own layer. So layer via copy to put it on its own layer, and then this will be our pumpkin, and we'll name it pumpkin. So we've got our background image, which is everything, and then we've got our pumpkin, which is that. Okay. Next instruction, we're going to go onto our background layer, and we're going to darken the image and pull out some of the bright colors that are working right now. Now this won't affect our pumpkin because we're going to be down here right above the background layer. So I'm going to click on the button to add an adjustment layer, and probably one of the easiest ones to do is a levels adjustment, which we'll use to darken. If you pull in, don't use the bottom slider, use the middle one here. That'll darken the image. And this here deals with the gray spaces, so if some of your middle areas you want to darken up, you can do that there as well. Don't pull this one in or it lightens up the white areas, so you don't want to pull that one in at all. Okay, so however dark you like is fine. We'll do another levels adjustment at the very end of the whole thing. And then we'll also do a hue saturation adjustment layer and pull down the saturation some so that the green isn't such a vivid green, but almost more of a gray. Now it won't be on the edge of the pumpkin, but it should be everywhere else. So I'm just pulling the saturation, and you can pull the lightness down again too to kind of darken that some more on here. Okay, so now we've got things a little spookier, and this is all kind of your call, whatever you like on there. So these two adjustment layers are right above the background, meaning they only apply to the background layers. You can see how those are working, but our pumpkin up here is untouched. There's the other pumpkin, and here's our good pumpkin. Okay, now on the pumpkin layer, we're going to add an inner shadow so that it doesn't look like it's just sort of out there. It needs to blend in a little better. So we'll hit the FX button and go to inner shadow. And then here, under your inner shadow settings, you've just got to kind of choose whatever you think looks good. I like to uncheck the global light button when I'm doing this so it doesn't mess with other things. You can see it's coming from the top. You can mess with the choke some. The size will diffuse it. So I like to come and diffuse that. I don't want to have a really hard shadow. See how that's hard? If you pull it out, then that's going to diffuse that shadow more. So now it looks a little bit better. So that takes care of that one. And again, you can kind of set these, every time I do it, I set it differently. So it really truly is just a matter of what you like. Okay? So that takes care of that. Now I'm going to add to the pumpkin layer, so right above the pumpkin layer, a hue saturation. But I want to connect it to only the pumpkin layer so it does not mess with the background. So instead of pushing this button down here, the easiest way to do that is to be clicked on the pumpkin layer, go to Layer and New Adjustment Layer, and then we're going to go ahead and choose Hue Saturation here. But don't just skip past this. We want to click this box, Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask, which basically just means only do it to that layer. So we're going to check mark the box and hit OK, and notice this is pointing down into that. So whatever we do will only affect the pumpkin. We want to make this a little more orange, so I'm going to go deeper orange there. You could up the saturation of your orange even if you wanted to. Make it more orange, and then again you can darken it some if you want to, and again this is all just basically what you like on here, but just to modify the orange on the pumpkin a little bit. So there's my before and here's my after, so it's a little darker and orange. Okay, that takes care of that one. Now we're going to create a new layer, so while we're clicked on the top layer, hit the new layer button. On this new layer, I'm just going to call it left eye, and honestly for this you could do whatever you want. Yours doesn't have to be a jack-o'-lantern face. It can be whatever, but I'm going to make mine a left eye. And now we're going to, using a black paintbrush, we're going to draw the outline of the eye or whatever it is you're going to do. Now, we want to set our colors to black and white, so hit that top button so black is on top and choose your brush. I strongly suggest you don't stick with just your basic brushes, so don't use a round brush. Go to one of these like less perfect brushes, okay? So I'm going to go to a less perfect brush. I'm going to zoom up and draw this. So you're going to take your brush and you're going to kind of draw your eye. And see how this brush is cool. It's got like little breaks around the edges of it. Now I'll paint in the middle part because we do want that to be completely filled in. And you can actually use a button to fill that in too, and I'll show you that in a second. Alright, so whatever you want that to look like. The point is we want it to have these like cut out areas. So that's why I'm using this kind of brush and not a round or a, what I'd call a pretty brush. We want an irregular or grungy brush. Okay. Alright, so then once you get that, you can, just to make sure it's all filled in, take your magic wand and click on it, and then edit and fill. And you want to make sure that you fill it with black, because that's our fill-in color. Okay, now do notice that kind of pulls it out some, so you kind of have to depend on whether you like that look or if you liked it before. If I back up a couple steps, you can see it looks a little different that way. So you can leave it that way if you want to, but you do need to make sure if you do leave it that you've really gone in here, at least in these middle sections, and got a hold of everything, because otherwise if you had a glow or something, the glow will also end up in those areas. So you may have to kind of follow this back through with something else. Okay, so I've got my left eye drawn on there, and I filled it in. So now I'm going to duplicate this layer. So I'm just going to drag this layer down to this little white piece of paper button, and it gives me another one. And I'm going to name the duplicate left eye inside. So just double click. This is the part that's going to be inside this little eye pocket. And then I'm going to move it below the other one. And then I'm going to turn the eyeball off on this top one, because that one's going to stay black for now, and I'm going to do something else to this bottom one. Now I'm going to apply some layer styles to this. So the first thing we're going to do, and you can zoom out now if you want to, Control minus, so you can kind of see it better. You may want to move it over a little bit. Probably looks better if I put it towards the middle. If you needed to Control T and transform it around, you know, whatever. You can get it all set however you want. But anyway, at this point now we're ready to add our layer styles, which is the FX button. So I'm going to click on the FX button, and I'm going to go to Bevel and Emboss, and that's going to bring this up, and that bevel is going to kind of give it that 3D look. Now again, honestly, you can kind of mess with these however you want. Some tutorials say use an outer bevel, some say use an inner bevel, some say use smooth, some say use chisel. So again, this is kind of up to you a little bit. You don't want it to look, you know, fake. Our point here is to try to make it look like it's carved. So again, it's really up to you as to what you think looks best. Okay? So I'm going to set it, for this particular example, I'm going to do an inner bevel, and I'm going to set my chisel to hard, and a little bit of depth here, so you can go a little more depth if you want. Right now I've got my light that's going on, so I'm going to fix that. Again, your size, 5 or 6, something like that probably will be fine. Global light, that affects the shadows and how they move. I like to turn that off, and then I can just position it however I want with this little angle thing. So you can choose which way. I like to have it come from this side, so I move this little arrow kind of around to this side. Okay, additionally we're going to select the highlight mode. So that's the light areas of this, they're now white. I'm going to choose a different color for those, and we'll just choose kind of an orange color. See how it's turning to orange, so that it looks more like the reflection off the pumpkin. And you can choose, you know, how light or how dark. I'm going to go lighter this time. One of them I went light and the other one I went dark. And I like to set it on normal as well on that. And then you've also got a shadow mode, and you might choose to mess with that too. It's totally up to you. Right now the shadows are black. Some of the instructions will tell you to set your shadows to maybe like a red. Again, if you go, you know, set it on normal, it goes crazy, so you probably want to leave it on multiply. But again, this is all sort of totally up to you as far as settings go. Okay? And then we're going to check texture as part of the bevel. So that's this little button here. And you're going to click on here. And this brings up the texture. And you can choose any texture that you want. It's not going to show a lot. We're going to scale it down so there's just little bitty remnants of the texture. 10 to 20% really is enough on this. Just enough to give it some depth. And then we're going to do color overlay. So we'll click on the words, color overlay. Right now it's set to red, which is not going to work. We're going to make sure it's set on normal. Come over here and pick an orange color and set it to that. And then you're probably going to pull this back. So we're going to pull it back to like 50% or so, 40, 50%. And then we're going to add an outer glow. So outer glow. Again, we don't want it to be a crazy one. Pull the opacity back some so it's not glowing a whole lot, but just so it's glowing just a little bit. Okay, so now we'll press OK. Right now it doesn't look so hot, but don't worry. We're going to turn on the other piece. And, oh, I moved the other one before I did this one, but that's okay. Now we're going to take this other one and position it inside the other one. So we're going to press Control T and size it down some and rotate it around and get it positioned in there so that it looks like it's a carved out hole. So you can use your arrow keys to kind of position that if you want. But that's basically what we're going after, something of that nature right there. Okay, and you can see that texture now gives us that kind of look so that it looks like it's actually carved in there a bit. So on this one though, although this looks kind of cool, what we're actually going to do is end up putting a gradient inside there so it looks like there's, you know, like a candle kind of working back there. So for this particular one, we're going to add another layer style to this regular left eye, not the inside part. And we're going to set a bevel and emboss again. Again, it's totally up to you as to how you want to set it, outer or inner, smooth, you know, whatever you think looks good. Probably want it to be somewhat minimal. Turn off your global light and rotate it around some if you need to. Just get it to look whatever looks good to you. And then a gradient overlay. So click on the words gradient overlay. We're going to click here and change the gradient overlay colors to these, which are more like candle colors. And then we want to have an orange and a yellow and an orange one, but we're going to add a second yellow one in there, and we're going to change the right side orange to white. So we're going to take this one and switch it to white, and you can just double click it and switch it to white. And then we'll scoot this one over, and then we'll click in here again to create a second one, and then kind of scoot it over. So there's not going to be a whole lot of the orange. Okay? And you'll say okay. And then we're going to switch it to a radial, so it goes in the middle and goes out, which looks kind of funny right now. We're actually going to end up with the white being in the middle. But for now, we'll set it there. And we're going to uncheck the align with layer, which is going to make this huge. So we uncheck that. See, now it looks different. But the orange is in the middle, and we want the orange out here and the white in the middle. So it's like the candles in the middle. So we hit reverse to flip those. And then to position it, you actually can just take your mouse and pick it up and scoot it. I do like to scale it down some. So there I can see kind of some of that orange coming in. Or notice as you pull it over some more here, you can see that yellow, or that white rather. There we go. So I've got just a little bit of the orange over here, and I got some of that white in the middle. And that's kind of what you're looking for. Okay? So we got that. We're going to press OK. And again, if you're not happy with anything at this point, you want to change it now. So like if I don't really like the way that bevel's looking, so I'm going to come in here and maybe fix that up just a little bit. Ooh, definitely not that. So we'll mess with these settings just a little. We want a little bit kind of a shadow from it, but we don't want it to be too weird. Okay.
Mr. Tato, please call the
All right,
office.
so I'm going to stop here and pause,
please call
and then
the
I'll start
office.
part 2 of this, creating a jack-o'-lantern in Photoshop.